Howdy, folks. It's me again, Randy Ray, the literate Texan, and I posted a few book reviews earlier today, and I wanted to mix it up a little bit with something a little different content-wise. But here I am again at Driftwood Ranch talking about books, and today, I don't normally do this, but I've decided to create a TBR list for April. I can't guarantee I'll read all of these books. I can't guarantee I'll read any of these books. But I am planning to read these books in April. And some of them are rereads. Some of them I've never read before, but I know by reputation. Some of them I read so long ago I don't remember them at all. But this is my to be read or TBR for April of 2023. First off, let's get this out of the way. We're going to do some Shakespeare this month. And I'm going to read The Taming of the Shrew, see if it's as sexist and terrible as everybody always says it is. This will be a reread. I am also planning a video for my friend at Vitriolic Reviews about how to get into Shakespeare. And I'm still working on my notes for that. That's probably going to be a fairly lengthy video, but Shakespeare is one of the great pleasures of life. The Taming of the Shrew is really funny. I first became familiar with it, like many people my age, through an episode of Moonlighting in the 1980s. I believe the name of the episode was Atomic Shakespeare. The framing device was a student who was skipping his Shakespeare homework because he wanted to watch Moonlighting, and he falls asleep and he has a dream, and Dave and Maddie act out the plot of The Taming of the Shrew. Although they didn't follow the script exactly, they did use, I believe, iambic pentameter throughout, or blank verse, or whatever Shakespeare wrote in for that particular play. You know, he didn't always use the same verse structure, even from section to section in each play. So, more about that in a video to come soon. And I am qualified to talk about Shakespeare a little bit because, believe it or not, in spite of the hillbilly accent, I do have an English literature degree. I am also going to read King Lear, which I've been watching Succession with great interest on HBO. It's hard to watch Succession and not think about King Lear a little bit. So anyway, again, a reread. I took Shakespeare in college. By the way, these are the Folger Shakespeare Library editions, which are my favorite editions of Shakespeare to read. They've got the text of the play on one side of the page, and then they've got the footnotes on the other side of the page. And I'll talk a little bit about how I recommend navigating that in my upcoming How to Get Into Shakespeare video that I'm planning. Also, I'm going to read Titus Andronicus, which is not a reread. I've never read this play. My understanding is it's a little bit of blood and violence and kind of an exploitation film of plays from Shakespeare's time. It's one of his earlier plays. It's not well thought of critically, from what I understand. But this year I'm going to read all of them, so I might as well read the bad ones too. I like exploitation films. I like horror movies with a lot of gore. I may really like Titus Andronicus. I did enjoy the movie. And my final Shakespeare of the month, this is, as you can see, one for each week. This is Richard III. I don't know why I had to look at that. I knew what it was. Richard III is one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. I really loved the film version with Ian McKellen. And I think he's just an incredibly compelling villain. I don't know if he's up there with Iago or not from Othello. But in terms of Shakespearean villains, he's a pretty bad dude. That's it for the Shakespeare. I am going to dip my toes back into the horror waters again with a reread of The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This is good and creepy. It is not my favorite haunted house novel. And haunted house novels are a very distinct genre, distinct from ghost stories even. And I'll probably talk about that in a future video. But my favorite haunted house novel is called The House Next Door, and it's by Anne Rivers Siddons. And it was the only paranormal book that she ever wrote. I just reread it not long ago, but I am looking forward to rereading The Haunting of Hill House. I will probably not ever reread Hell House by Richard Matheson again, because I think it was a really poor rewrite of The Haunting of Hill House, even though I know it was really popular. But again, I'm starting to digress, because now I'm talking about books that aren't on my TBR. I guess that's okay too. Not too long ago, I participated in one of Steve Donahue's question and answers to celebrate his 6,000 videos, and I asked him what his favorite Star Trek novels were, and it turns out we have some pretty overlapping tastes. I remember The Strangers from the Sky being one of my favorite Star Trek novels that I read in the early to mid 1990s, which seems like forever ago, but it also seems just like yesterday, but I really, really enjoyed this. This is a book club edition that I have sitting up there on my bookshelf, just waiting to read. I'm going to give it a reread and see if 53-year-old Randy Ray likes Strangers from the Sky as much as 23-year-old Randy Ray did. Also, Guilty Pleasure Time. Star Trek The Return, a novel by William Shatner. Now, everybody knows that he hires ghostwriters to write these books for him, even though they don't get their picture on the back like Bill does. Anyway, it's a fantastic book. It's a reread. My favorite aspect of this book, and I'll never forget it, is that after they resurrect Captain Kirk in the 24th century, he systematically tracks down and beats up every member of the Star Trek Next Generation cast. Well, not cast, but the entire cast of characters, one at a time. And my favorite part, of course, is when he beats up Worf. Because, let's face it, even then, Captain Kirk, resurrected, he's 60 years old. What chances he got against Worf? Anyway, I'm sure I'll get into it in the review, but the gimmick is that Shatner knows, well, not Shatner. Shatner and Kirk might as well be interchangeable anyway. But the gimmick is that Kirk knows some ancient form of Klingon martial arts. I've got brain cancer. Well, I've got cancer brain, but not brain cancer. But he knows this ancient Klingon martial arts that Worf isn't familiar with, and he uses it in order to beat him up. And because of course it's Kirk's book, he beats up and shows up everybody from Picard's generation. And in fact, there's a whole series of these books called the Shatnerverse books, where basically Captain Kirk and what's left of his crew that's still surviving well into the 24th century one up the Next Generation crew every chance they get. It's absolutely hysterical. Next, Jack Kerouac, The Dharma Bums. I've never read anything by Jack Kerouac before, but I have been watching and really enjoying Ted Lasso. I noticed that was one of the books that he was reading on there, and I thought, well, it's not very long. I might as well give it a shot and see what I think. But that's not all. I'm also planning to read Crash by J.G. Ballard. I saw the David Cronenberg film a couple different times. It stars James Spader and Holly Hunter. I've never read this book before, but like I say, I have seen the movie and I understand the plot. It's about people who fetishize car crashes and injuries from car crashes. Like literally fetishize it. That's their sexual fantasy. So anyways, a weird movie, as most David Cronenberg films are. I'm sure it's also a weird novel. Someone told me in the comments recently of a YouTube channel that was talking about Crash that J.G. Ballard and David Cronenberg might as well be the same person. It's just that one operates in the genre of film while the other one writes novels. Next, Tales of Ordinary Madness by Charles Bukowski. I have not read this, although I have read other stuff from Bukowski. I have mixed feelings about Bukowski. Loved the movie Barfly, loved the movie Factotum. I've liked some of his poetry. I enjoyed the novel Women. So, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. It's a collection of short stories. I'm looking forward to dipping into it and seeing what it's all about. I'm a recovering alcoholic myself. I can relate to being a barfly and drinking around the clock. even though I haven't engaged in that kind of behavior in over 9 years now. Next, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Let me know in the comments. Rebecca is a reread, but I barely remember it. This was assigned reading in my senior high school class. Thanks for turning me on to this book, Mrs. Knight, if you happen to be seeing this. If not, that's cool too. But, all the books I read in Mrs. Knight's English class in high school were actually really good. So this is the one I least remember. I'm actually looking forward to dipping back into it. And finally, this is the last book on my TBR list. Although I am going to participate in the S&M Travel Book Club, and they have a book lined up for that. I've already forgotten the title of it, but I'm going to get it and read it. But that's the Steve and Mark S&M. So it's not anything too kinky. I don't know. So anyway, last on my list of April 2023 TBR is My Best Friend's Exorcism by New York Times bestselling author Grady Hendrix. Never read anything by Grady Hendrix. Never read this book before, but I'm looking forward to diving into it and seeing what it's all about. My friend Russell has read some Grady Hendrix, or at least listened to the audiobooks, and he thinks I'm going to like it. So it's probably good for me to branch out into the horror field and read some stuff I haven't read before. That's my tentative April 2023 TBR plan. Tell me about what you're planning to read in April, or if you have any comments about any of the books on this list, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. And I sure hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. See you next time.